Most of us men, we resent the woman. She's dramatic. She's this and that, without noticing that it's the pain of me being unconscious that makes her suffer. Big part of the journey was being invited to an ayahuasca ceremony that literally, almost overnight, just redirected the course of my life. If the soil of who you are is full of a lot of garbage, it's going to be impossible for you to cultivate beautiful flowers.
Today, I'm going to get you guys to prepare for a journey into the depths of self-discovery and conscious connection. After more dedicated years in the jungles of Colombia and many journeys with plant medicine, he is back in the city looking to help bridge the gap between the intensity of the entrepreneurial world and the stillness and importance of being tapped into self, with the visionary himself, Nicolas Canon.
I didn't know that working was a way of coping. Partying, being with women, being on Tinder, like chasing was a way of coping. And I realized this is what I was looking for all those years. You know, with an addiction, you can never get enough of something that almost works, but pleasure is not peace.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Price to Sell podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Campoli. And today I'm going to get you guys to prepare for a journey into the depths of self-discovery and conscious connection. Our guest today is literally a hybrid of Sadhguru and Alex Hormozi. He comes all the way from Colombia and was then thrown into the fast-paced lifestyle of Toronto at the age of 17. During his time here, he began to earn multiple six figures very quickly, but at the same time, went down a deep journey of self-discovery through coping and pain. And now, after more dedicated years in the jungles of Colombia and many journeys with plant medicine, he is back in the city looking to help bridge the gap between the intensity of the entrepreneurial world and the stillness and importance of being tapped into self. Join us as we delve into the philosophical depths with the visionary himself, Nicolas Canon. Thank you for coming.
You,
I worked on that hard.
yeah, that was
Can you
perfect.
tell?
Yes,
Thanks.
amazing.
Thanks. But thank you for coming, man.
Appreciate you having me.
I discovered you on Instagram and was very moved by how you spoke and delivered your message. It's just different. It's very different. You could tell that you're tapped into something, you know? So it's very cool. And a lot of stuff you talk about we can get into, but you can see what's authentic out there and not, right? And through you can see the authenticity. So I want to give you the applause.
Thank you.
Of course. But for those that don't know you, if you want to give people a little bit of a brief bio.
Yeah, so I think you summed it up very well. Basically, I grew up in Colombia and many things happened. I ended up moving to Canada very early by myself. I was 16 years old. And growing up being extremely shy, afraid of women, adults, just stuttering when I spoke with anybody, I figured I don't want to live with so many limitations. So let me be somebody else in this country where nobody knows me. And because there was, and there still is, a lack of healthy role models, then I figured, like, what does it mean to be a man? Like, a man. And I figured, it's the guys who are all tattooed, jacked, have all the women, are partying, like that kind of stereotype, archetype. And fast forward, I spent probably over a decade chasing that. Like chasing money, chasing sex, chasing social status. At one point, I was like taking steroids, 200 pounds. And I had checked all the boxes of what society had told me this is what it means to be a man. And I was the most miserable I had ever been, with the worst relationships, making a lot of money, sure, having a lot of sex, yes, but completely empty. And then that led into drug addiction, workaholism, just alcoholism as well, and just being consumed by ways of coping from a lifestyle that is not sustainable. And in Toronto, it's a city that kind of gives you a little bit more voltage to follow that. So that led me to kind of break down, to really break down and touch rock bottom and figure, after a couple of overdoses, I need to change something. So I went to Colombia where my family was, and big part of the journey was being invited to an ayahuasca ceremony. And I figured, like, I'm taking all kinds of random things that people give me at the party.
Yeah.
This is natural, like, can't be that bad. And people say it's it's helped them. And fast forward a few years, like that changed my life. That literally, almost overnight, just redirected the course of my life, of my priorities. It showed me that there was much more, way more than what I thought there was in life. And then I found myself on the other extreme, where I was living in an ayahuasca community. We were living there with my wife, basically showering in water, like cold water from the river, spending our days chopping wood, carrying water, drinking medicine, making fires in the evening, and sitting with the community and playing music and connecting. And that was deeply nourishing. And spiritually, it woke so many things up within me, so much that I ended up traveling to India and just deepening my spiritual journey. But eventually I had to come to Toronto, where home is. And I came back and I realized that in many ways I had gone a little too far, in the sense that I found myself a little bit judgmental of the world and people, and a little bit righteous and divisive, and living a spirituality that was not very inclusive, and that was hard to live in harmony with living in the city, with living with people that have different priorities, different lifestyles. And I felt that somewhere along the lines, something broke, and my own journey led me to understand that either extreme is too bad. You dissociate, you become too attached to altered states of consciousness, that you may start judging this life as something that it's not pure enough or not good enough, or you get caught up into the partying and the density of a city life, and then you forget about your soul. And finally, like, that came together, and I realized actually the real spiritual journey is in honoring all of our life, honoring my body, honoring everything that is physical, like family, business, losing the rejection of being involved with the world, and remembering that, like, the masters that we still speak about to this day, like Jesus, they were not up in the mountain. They were in the markets, hanging out with the fishermen, with the prostitutes. So I realized that modern spirituality has gotten a little too judgy, bypassing, dissociated, disembodied. And anyway, so I had to come back from that. I felt that was just as damaging as this. And it led me to realize that there's a lot of spiritual people that could use discipline, consistency, understanding about business, and a lot of business people that could use connection to the heart.
Big time. Yeah. I love that. And I'd like to start with one extreme. The first one. So you saw this identity, how to be what you thought was a man, and you wanted to check off all those boxes. Then you get there, and that's inclusive of making good money too. I think a lot of people, the one box that sometimes never gets checked off is the financial one, being where you want to be financially. So they might spend their whole life chasing it and maybe never get there. But for those that do, I think it's important if you can help describe how it was for you when you had all those things and then you felt empty in that one extreme. Like, what was that feeling for you? How did you become aware of that?
So at that time, I was working as a tattoo artist, and I went within a 2-year period from making $2,500, $3,000 a month to making sometimes over $3,000 per day. And it was a huge jump. A lot of my clients used to pay cash. So I literally used to have this bag full of cash at home, like a proper Colombian person, you know?
Makes sense.
And I just remember I will tattoo, clients will pay a couple of grand, they will tip me a few $100. Like I was making over 30K per year just on tips.
Mm-hmm.
So people were tipping me, and I'm thinking they're happy. I'm doing a lot of money, and then they will leave, and suddenly I will open a wine bottle, pour it, go on Tinder or call some girls or go to a party and come home a lot like later and repeat the next day a little hangover, work with a client, make some money, and consumed in that hamster wheel until there was one day that I woke up. There was no party going on. It was a quiet day. And I sat there with this anxiety of, like, I felt restless because I didn't know that working was a way of coping, staying busy, partying, being with women, being on Tinder, like chasing was a way of coping. Coping from how uncomfortable I felt underneath all of that. So literally one day I woke up, hangover, there's nothing going on. And I remember I had to go and buy something. And I remember like sitting in my tattoo studio, like I grabbed the bag and there's way more money than I've had in my whole life. And I remember they're looking at that and thinking like this is meaningless. Sure, it gives you freedom to choose experiences, it can provide comfort, but I realized I had way more comfort, way more freedom of choice that I had ever had. And I was completely miserable. So in the moment I understood that beyond comfort, it won't give you peace, it won't give you joy. And of course, everybody tells you like, money doesn't buy happiness. But I think most people need to figure that out for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because otherwise, I can live in denial saying, I just don't care about money as a way of hiding that I am afraid of stepping into my calling, sharing my gifts, being more organized, being more courageous in my career. So people hide behind, oh, money is evil, or I don't care about money, out of insecurity. And then some more people just consume their lives chasing it. But for me, it was the day that I realized, oh, I'm still miserable. So this is clearly not the solution, because if it was, the more money there is in that bag, the better I'll feel. And it was just the other way around.
So then what was the action step you took to, you realized, okay, something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's maybe a deeper discovery
Yeah.
to go down. What made you take that trip to Colombia?
Yeah. The first thing was that this is the hardest thing for anyone, and is I stopped bullshitting myself. Because I was pretending that, like, I was the party guy. I was the guy, you come downtown, you pre-drink at my place, we after party at my place. I was the open relationships guy, meaning like girls knew that if they wanted to have some fun, there's Nico, no strings attached. So on the surface, people thought, well, this guy is killing it in his tattoo business. He has women. He's laughing and partying all the time. And I thought, I'm doing great. I had to get crystal clear and brutally honest with myself and be willing to admit that I don't know what I'm doing, that I feel lost, and that I need help. Like, if I could figure this out on my own, I would have. Or I wouldn't be here. So that's always the first step, because nothing can come. There's no room for growth if I think I'm perfect. If I think I got it handled, like I'm okay as I am, there's no way to go. So for me, it took a lot, because I had a big ego. I was very proud, a big identity, a big social image to keep. And I had to put that aside and look within and say, I'm not happy. And I need help. When we have the courage to be that honest with ourselves, not with judgment, not saying, oh, I'm a piece of shit. No, just to look clearly in the mirror and say, this is not who I am. And I really don't want to stay here. something very profound moves in the universe, in life, the source of creation, which is like there's an opening. Now there's your soil, which was full of junk and garbage. Suddenly there's a little spot that is fertile for a seed to sprout. So in that moment, the moment that you say that you touch that place, which for most people is rock bottom, right away the teacher, the mentor, the medicine, the path opens up. Like invitations come, because life, God, the creator, whatever people label the source of all that we are, that's not hiding somewhere. That's always here, waiting for us to receive it. It's just waiting. Mm-hmm. We're closed up. We're constipated. Mm-hmm. It wants to flow through us. We are the happiest, the most joyful when it's flowing through us. You see a child. Why are children so captivating? Because it's just life flowing through them, unfiltered. They're happy. They're joyful. And they're slaves. They have to go where their parents want to take them. They have no control over their time or what they do. Just they pick them up, they put them somewhere else, and the child is happy no matter what, because life is flowing freely. Trauma, things happen, and then suddenly we close off, and that's when pain comes, suffering comes. So admitting that we need help, being honest with ourselves, like, that was the first and most important step, because in that moment, life starts. It's like, the creator is waiting for you to say, hey, I need you. I'm ready. I want to live differently. It's like you do. Like, let's see it. Like, you're drowning. Here's a rope. Mm-hmm. Will you grab it? That's still up to you.
So then, what are some steps? I guess because even if you intuitively feel that okay, there's some clues leading me to believe that this is an invitation from a higher source potentially, or this person's coming into my life, or the synchronicities. But what kind of actions, like, or lessons, and how did you learn about them to now get to the next steps? Because we, like, you speak about like the shadow, and obviously these traumas or pains that we have to clear to allow the energy to flow through. What's the actual work to be done to clear these blockages?
Yeah. So pathways, there are many, right? For me, the beginning of it was plant medicine. Is not the only way, and it's not the way for many people. The only medicine really is awareness. Anything that invites you to pay close attention and see the truth of where you're at, that's your medicine. For some people, a relationship does that. Meaning, your wife is complaining to you, she's nagging, there's a lot of drama at home. That's a mirror, very strong mirror. Nothing like a woman to call out a man, to reflect, mirror back to him his unconsciousness. Most of us men, we resent the woman. Oh, she's dramatic, she's this and that, without noticing that it's the pain of me being unconscious that makes her suffer very often. Family, let's say, your body, something starts to break to point you towards the place where attention needs to be placed. Now, the actions, the steps, for me, what came out of that trip to Colombia, what came out of drinking plant medicine was a profound understanding of what was true and what wasn't. Which is this: if the soil of who you are, of your heart, is full of a lot of garbage, it's going to be impossible for you to cultivate beautiful flowers. Or you may try, you may have the perfect seeds, you may have the best tools, you may have a coach that is a world-class gardener, and nothing's going to work for you. Why? Because the soil is so acidic or so full of stuff that nothing's going to grow. So what's the first step? This is very practical, but later on I realized that it's also the first step in different tantric, yogic, spiritual traditions around the world, and they call it purification. That's just a fancy word to say, get honest with yourself and see what in your life is poison. So what I will say to anyone is the first thing is many of us know the poisons that we have fallen in love with. In my case, it was alcohol, it was women, or the chasing of women and pleasure. It was lying, lack of commitment, like being very flexible and flaky with my words. Those were the bigger ones. And then parallel to that, there were many things, which were friendships that were not nurturing, people that I kept in my life, whom in my heart I felt were out of integrity. But we stayed in each other's life because I was also out of integrity. So practical step. And the first homework that I got from ayahuasca was, hey, like, look at your relationship with alcohol. Look at your relationship with women. Look at your friendships. Look at how you spend your time. You put so much garbage inside of yourself. You put yourself in so many garbage environments and situations, and you're wondering why there's no beauty blossoming. This is possible, but you gotta clean it up a little bit so something else can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first step. So, and the hardest,
Yes.
because that was my life. I came back and I realized, like, I still have a choice. I can go back into what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just gonna create more of where I am right now. So, fastest way to bloom is you put yourself in fertile soil. What's fertile soil? It is conscious activities, things that nourish our heart. For everyone, that's different.
What, can you give an example?
I'd say one of the best examples is the company we keep,
Mm.
the people we hang out with, and in today's world also the people we follow on social media. Because most people spend more time with the people they follow on social media than with their real life friends.
It's true.
If people look at their phone and how long they've spent this
Mhm.
week on Instagram, on Facebook, on social media,
Yes.
it's hours and hours and hours and hours every day. Nobody spends that much time with their friends. So, but it will be that, like, quality company, friends that you look at and you say, I admire you. Like, you inspire me to live with more integrity, with more love. Also, the kind of friends that don't condone your nonsense. I used to have friends with whom going and taking drugs in the bathroom and then partying and getting drunk and doing that the next day. It's like, ha ha ha, giggles, giggles, no big deal. Oh, you were so drunk last night, and then let's have a beer. And that's the norm for that group of friends is, that's the norm. That was,
Mhm. That's what the connection is.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
The moment that I started hanging out with different people, at one point I was living with ayahuasca community, hanging out with shamans and elders. It blew my mind the level of integrity, of respect, of love with which these men lived. Because I was used to something very different.
Mhm.
And I also saw that whom I was didn't pass with them.
Mhm.
Like, being reckless, ha ha ha. They were men. They're like,
Mhm.
hey man, that's like, what's going on? What are you doing? I'll call them and say, oh, I'm thinking of breaking up with my girlfriend. And my past friends would have been like, yeah, man, yeah, just nourish that.
Mhm. Mhm.
These men they would call me out. They're like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
Like, what are you doing? Where's your commitment? What's happening?
Yes.
They'd say, like, come, man. And they will tell me truths that I didn't like hearing to my face.
Mhm.
And I resented them. I thought, that this guy's such an asshole. Now I understand that that's real love. So putting ourselves in spaces, and if we don't have the friends, we can find the books, we can have the people on social media. Most people who have gone through a lot of darkness are very generous and share openly about their journey, so we can imbibe that. Or in today's world, like, hey, like, put your money where your attention and your mind is, meaning you can pay somebody that you admire to be close to them, to learn from them, to understand how they operate, and be in a similar level, understand, oh, this is why this person lives so happy, so wealthy, has such good relationships. So that's part of that. And it goes all the way, if we get a little bit more spiritual, it goes all the way to the music that we listen to, the food that we eat. Every single thought that we have is either nourishment for who we are or is planting some weeds. And healing is not an overnight journey. There's no end goal, but it's becoming good gardeners of ourselves. And a good gardener keeps away the pests. A good gardener is very intentional about what seeds they plant. If there are animals that will destroy that, keeps them at bay. So for me, it was also changing that, understanding most of the music that we listen to is garbage. The lyrics, the rhythm makes you vibrate at a way that pulls you down. Like, you look at the famous people, they look far from happy. Most of them, generally speaking. There's certain heaviness and shadow that is carried that goes through here. At least what we eat, we have a stomach and digestive juices that tries to destroy all the garbage that we put inside. But we rarely think that what's going through our ears and through our eyes has no filter. We're just planting this straight. So usually that's why in many traditions, sitting in silence, going into nature, the 40 days that Jesus went into the desert, the vision quests of most cultures where kids are casted out when they're about to become a man or a woman. Why that period of silence and isolation? Because you have to, if there's too much noise, it's very hard for you to find what's the song, your song. What's the song that your heart wants to play in this life?
Yes.
If there's too much noise, it's going to be very hard because you don't know if this is coming from outside or from here.
Yeah.
So cutting stuff that doesn't serve you, making some space to listen to what wants to come forth naturally, and putting yourself close to people that live lives that in some way you admire for the right reasons. Like, not only is this guy wealthy, but is this guy's wealth in service to his joy, his sense of meaning, his sense of happiness. So there's many millionaires that are miserable.
For sure.
As well as there are people who are very poor and very miserable for different reasons, right?
Yeah. Especially in the city, when you say with the being aware of what's coming in and setting the boundaries, it's hard in the city with so much going on, and then everyone being unconscious around you. But I want to dive into ayahuasca quickly. For those that don't know what it is, if you can explain what it is, and then just like simply like how it's the power behind it essentially, and why it's become such a popular thing for people in their journeys.
Yeah. So in essence, ayahuasca is a tea, it's a brew made out of two plants. One is a vine and one is a plant that, out of millions of possible combinations of plants that are in the Amazon jungle, indigenous people for thousands of years, like there's documents that say that prove that it has been used for over 1,000, 2,000 years. They found the two exact plants that, when mixed in a tea and prepared in a certain way, create an effect, a psychedelic effect.
How?
When they ask them, they say, nature told us.
Interesting.
That's the answer. That's the answer of a tribe in Colombia. That's the answer of a tribe in Brazil that has never met or been in relationship to the tribe in Colombia. Like isolated indigenous tribes throughout the world, many of them have the same origin story. They say nature told us.
How does nature tell them?
So for us that may grow up in the city or have more of a Western way of thinking, that sounds weird. Like, what? That's a tree-hugging hippie kind of thing to say, nature told me. But what you realize is that, again, because there's so much noise around us, we've become so dissociated and disconnected Most people cannot even hear what their body is saying, and they live in it. Most people eat garbage, and they don't notice until they have to go to the hospital,
Yeah.
until it's too late. If you're a little bit sensitive, if you drink a sip of alcohol, you will notice how every cell of your body instantly goes like this because it's poison. So let's start with that. Most of us, or most people, certainly I was this way before. I couldn't feel like I can put up drugs, poison, and not feel a thing. Now, when you start doing that process of clearing, of getting your things together, of becoming more available to life, you become way more sensitive. First to yourself, to your emotions, to your body. You put something and right away you know, this is not for me. This is not good for my system. But then you become more sensitive to what's outside of you. You can look at somebody and you sense, all right, like this person's energy is nourishing or it's a bit vampiric.
Yes.
Like it drains me. You can notice this in places. Like there are places where I enter and I take a step and I know right away what's going on. What has gone on for the last few weeks, and I notice that and I say, okay, this is not for me. Indigenous people were so sensitive that it extends to nature, being so sensitive to notice the message coming from a plant, from a tree, right? So
Interesting.
in a psychedelic state, many people talk to the trees and to the flowers and to the animals. Why? Because you're more available to receive.
Yes.
Because your rigidity, the rigidity of your mind, the noise of your mind kind of quiets down and you receive more. So that is why they said nature told us, and it sounds crazy, but anyone who's taking enough psychedelics knows that this is a real possibility.
Yes.
For them, it was just, they lived a very pure life in harmony with nature, very simple life. So they were very connected. Now, it's a brew that today has become very popular, right? So I know there's people that host ayahuasca ceremonies here in Toronto, and it's like 1 a.m. and they tell you, hey man, you should get an Uber. It's time to go home. It's getting late. You're not done with your trip, and they send you home. We've had some clients that say, oh, I hate ayahuasca. It was not very good. We asked them, yeah, I was feeling so bad, and then I had to take an Uber all the way home, and I'm thinking, oh my God. There's people who do it in warehouses in New York. Traditionally, it was done ceremonially, led by a shaman for his village. And it was led in a temple, in a Maloka, indigenous temple, and it was a sacred gathering. Fortunately, there's still indigenous communities that carry this tradition, and there are still shamans, elder, that dedicated their lives to sharing this medicine. So when done in the right context, like with the right elder, and you look at these men, and for example, a couple of years ago, I sat in ceremony with a 110-year-old elder.
Oh, wow.
He didn't have a cane. He was bright. He stayed up way past the time people were going to sleep, fully lucid and healthy and clear, 110. And if you ask him, like, how are you still alive? How are you so vital? He said, oh, it's nature. It's the medicine. So there's people that are really, really connected to nature. When done with someone that you can trust, with an elder, it takes you way deeper than it will take you with a facilitator or somebody that spent 3 months in Peru and calls themselves a shaman.
Yes.
And what happens is you enter the ceremony, you go to the temple, you go to the jungle, you go to Colombia, to a place where they host it. And the power behind it is that in a practical way, you drink it and it brings you into an altered state of consciousness, but one that starts to provide deep clarity about your life. It starts to show you the areas where you're stuck, where you're attached, where you're clinging. For example, when I first drank it, started showing me my demons, my darkness, my lust, my alcoholism, but not in a way of, look, like there's something wrong with you, but it showed me that, and then started bringing up memories that I had forgotten that had happened. For example, there was this one time that I was in my house. I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I'm running in my house and running away from my mom. My mom has this belt on her hand, and in Colombia it was very common. Like you hit your children.
Same in the Italian culture. Yeah.
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 It's like if you don't hit them, they're not disciplined. They don't grow up as good kids. So that was standard. So I'm running from my mom. She's coming with the belt. I lock the door behind me, and she's smashing that door. Open the effing door. Open it. Open it. And she will scream, if you don't open it, I'm going to hit you harder. And as a child, it's like you're negotiating with a terrorist. Sometimes I will open it right away because I don't want to know what harder it's going to be. Because if she's angry or not, she's going to be angry later. This one time, I don't know what I did. I broke a vase or something. I was playing rough with my sisters, and I knew that she was going to hit me very hard. So I'm panicking. I'm thinking, I'm not going to open that door. And I just hear she's kicking it and smashing it. And she went to look for the house keys. And the house keys were all in this big bundle of like 40 house keys that all look similar. So she's trying one by one because they're not named or labeled, one by one. And I can see that every key that she tries to use just makes her more upset because it's not the right one. She's kicking it and open. And I'm figuring out, like, what do I do? So I go inside the closet. I hide in a corner. I throw a lot of clothes on top of me. And I'm there literally just waiting as I hear my mom getting angry, kicking, screaming. I'm basically just bracing for impact. And I remember after some time, I hear the lock open, and I'm like, that's silent. She's like, where are you? Where are you? And I can hear she's looking under the bed, which is where I usually used to hide. Where are you? She opens the closet. She doesn't see me. And I'm thinking, I made it. I made it alive. And suddenly, I think she realizes that there's this like bunch of clothes on the floor. So she pulls them, and then she grabs me and starts hitting me. And the pain of the belt was not really that much. But I remember that something within me really broke in that moment. Because the woman that I loved the most, which was my mother, and that told me she loved me, was so violent. I couldn't understand why. Like there's only two possible options. One, there must be something wrong with me. Two, love must include violence. This must be normal if you love somebody. And three, another thing that came up for me was love is not really safe. I had forgotten that this thing had happened. I knew that my mom had hit me, and I thought, well, I was a bit of a hyperactive child, and I rationalized why that happened and why that was normal in my culture. Now, today we have a beautiful relationship with my mom. We spoke about this. She cried. She apologized. Like we're in good terms. Mm-hmm. But when I was remembering this, I realized that my alcoholism, my drug addiction, like all of these were ways in which I was trying to run away from how much grief I felt, how disconnected I felt from love. And I was finding myself in situations, in relationships where a couple of women that I dated were physically violent, and I couldn't leave. I was attached to mm-hmm. toxicity and not understanding why can't I live. Mm-hmm. So ayahuasca allowed me to see that, all right, your drug addiction, your alcoholism, your sex addiction is not a problem. It's a solution that you found to a real problem that was the trauma, the pain, and it basically I relived this whole situation that I had forgotten. And I'm reliving it in the ceremony, and I'm feeling anger towards my mom, and I'm crying for my little self, and I feel angry, like, how could you have done that to a child? And in the moment that I'm feeling angry towards her, I start having a vision of my mom's youth. And I start seeing how she was beaten up by her family, how she was sexually abused by her first husband, how like I start seeing how much pain she carried, how much she had suffered, and how her violence had nothing to do with me and everything to do with her and what was unresolved within her. And I broke down crying because I had so much compassion. I understood why she did it. Doesn't mean that it was okay that she did it or that I condone it. But it allowed me to free myself from the judgment, from the resentment, from the hatred I had towards her that showed up in my relationships with women.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was mistreating women, like being uncommitted and just very disconnected, and yeah, didn't treat women with the love they deserved. And then I understood I was trying to get back at the women I was dating because of my mommy issues, which is the case for most men, vice versa with women. So I'm crying, I'm sobbing, and as I forgive her, I start feeling like a ball of something black here around my heart area, and my body starts compressing itself in very weird ways, like, and I feel this coming up here, and when it comes here, I start vomiting.
Yeah,
They
the
give
purging.
they give you a bucket, and I'm purging.
Interesting. Yeah.
And as I'm purging, I can feel that I'm purging the leftover, the physiological imprint of trauma in my body. That part of my heart that was closed, that part of myself that when I met a certain type of woman kind of resonated with that or reacted to it.
Yeah.
That restlessness that had me like, let's work, let's make some money, let's find some girls.
Yeah.
Like that was a bunch of chemicals flowing through my system. And I felt I was vomiting that, vomit. Until I had nothing more in me. And I remember I put the bucket down, I look up, and it's like life has gone from like 320 to 4K.
Yeah.
Everything is vibrant,
Yes.
colorful, the birds are singing. I look at a tree and I feel like the tree is looking back at me, and I just feel so light and so much love and so much peace. And I realized this is what I was looking for all those years, through sex, through alcohol. But with an addiction, you can never get enough of something that almost works, which is that like alcohol and sex almost work. It takes you to the edge, but pleasure is not peace.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, I realized, I'm home, I'm free, and there's so many more things that have happened like that, where what the medicine does is it holds your hand. They refer to her as a grandmother, as a wise spirit. She holds your hand and brings you to the parts of yourself that are very scary to look at, that you may not want to look at because of how much pain hides there, how much suffering.
Yeah.
And it allows you to look at that with compassion, with love, with wisdom. And once you have gathered the lessons, the gold from that experience, it also helps your body release it fully so that you are free. And here's the beautiful thing. People, when they try to quit drinking or their addictions, they're, okay, I'm going to do 1 month sober and the 12 steps. And there's this rigid approach to healing. I came back just because I was free from that stuff. Like, I tried to drink wine and my whole body went like that.
Interesting.
And I thought, the first thought I had was, must have bought poor quality wine. So I went back to the store, give me one more that is more expensive, came home, right now the good stuff. I drank it. And then like I had to rush to the toilet. I felt so sick from just a little sip. And I realized, I guess I don't like wine anymore. And that happened in many areas. I realized my desire to drink went away because the wound that I was trying to cope away from was no longer existent. So there's why drink, why chase women if the peace that I was seeking, if the joy, it's already inside of me.
Interesting.
So then my addictions more or less dropped, not overnight. Like I still had to put some effort, but it was much easier to let them go because there was no longer that attachment. There was no juice in them anymore.
Yeah, it's very fascinating how from the earth you can receive information and for it to give you memories that you have repressed. I've heard so many ayahuasca stories like that, so it's very interesting. Super cool, man. That's very cool. I do. So you're one of those guests where I probably have to bring on for part 2 because there's so much I want to talk about. Like there's like the relationship stuff and like so many things you touched on that I'd love to dive into deeper. But How I want to end it off is I have some quotes that you've said and from your socials or in your videos. I would love for you to just like unpack them quickly because they're very interesting. So I'll pick some here. So this one here. Those who have never worked for someone else will never understand the amount of courage that it takes to face the shame that you experience when wanting to be of service to the world, to live a conscious life, to run a conscious business. Those who have jobs will never understand what it's like to face your shadows just to make a living. And I believe I think this one was attached. There's no, I think let's stop there.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to keep it condensed.
Yeah.
So many people give a bad rep to millionaires, entrepreneurs, business people. Oh, the 1%. They don't know that I believe over 70, 80% of like multi-billionaires are ragged to riches stories, are people that started with nothing. Very few people got anything passed down from their parents. There's so much judgment towards people that are wealthy, and that has to do a lot with people's own unhealed relationship towards abundance and money. And this quote is about, and you for sure you know this, as an entrepreneur, you have to put yourself out there, and that is vulnerable because people are going to see you, because you're going to try to do things and many of those things will not work. So you fail in public, you start a business, it may work, it may not, you start a project, maybe you're successful soon, maybe it takes you 20 years. You're taking a lot of risk, especially if you want to do it consciously, meaning you don't want to cut corners, you want to treat your employees fairly, you want to be generous with your time, your attention. I recently saw the video you did with your employees, like 2 years work celebration.
Yes.
I thought that was beautiful. It's treating the people that serve us, that help us serve, like family. There's so much effort that takes into that, so much more energy and attention versus just there's your money, do your job, and like, don't take any of my time. And people that work 9 to 5, they will never understand how much doubt, insecurity, shame, like being an entrepreneur is almost always navigating between the line of I made it and I'm not good enough. Because it's that feeling of, I don't know if this is good enough, that drives improvement, that drives innovation, that drives upgrading everything that we do, trying to be better. If we thought that we were perfect, there's no room for improvement. So there has to be an underlying feeling of this could be better. Maybe not being good enough is the shadow aspect of it, but this could be better. And there's a lot to wrestle with because we wake up and we want to create some value for the world. And sometimes we don't know if it's going to work out. We put our money, we invest in things that we're hoping are going to pay off, and maybe they don't. And the lives and the livelihoods of some people depend on us. So it's not only the stress of making money for yourself, but you know, there's 1, 10, 200 families that depend on you. People who have jobs will never understand that like all the insecurity, all the fears that a person that wants to run a conscious business has to face in order to just put themselves out there.
Yeah.
And how judged they anyways get once they make it. Like, oh yeah, good for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
go through all that just to get. Yeah.
Must be nice.
Exactly.
It's like it was pretty awful most of the time. Like it was rough, and it took grit and patience and love, because without love for what you're doing is just impossible. Yeah. So that quote refers to that. Like it takes so much courage and faith to see I can do something for the world, and I want to do it well.
Yes. I love it. And this one here, because this is very interesting. So you touched about it before, so I'd love to elaborate a little bit more. But this quote here: "Go to the dark, abandoned corners of your psyche and face the demons that hide beneath your pain. If you don't do so, you will date people who reflect and highlight these back to you."
Yeah.
Very powerful.
I don't know if we mentioned it, but I spent close to a decade working as a relationship coach.
Yes.
And the core of what I used to teach and the biggest realization that I had was we are responsible for the relationships that we create, and every relationship we find ourselves in is perfect. Doesn't mean it's ideal or it's good, but it is the perfect relationship that we need. Why is that? Because every part of myself that I avoid looking at will somehow find expression through the way that my partner shows up. So if I don't have boundaries, I'm bound to date a woman that perhaps is pushy, that perhaps is very controlling, invasive. If I don't have much self-esteem, if I don't value myself much, I may date somebody who treats me like I'm just an option, like I'm easily replaceable. If I genuinely, like, we will never allow anyone to treat us worse than we treat ourselves. The problem with that is that the bar is really fucking low for most people.
Mm-hmm.
Like many people inside, what goes on here, if somebody heard it, they'll send them to a hospital. Like, how are you talking to yourself like that?
Mm-hmm.
That's wild, that's violent, that's rough, that's angry. So when this is our inner dialogue, what we're willing to put up with externally, like if it goes below that, we draw a line. But the line is so low that we invite toxicity. So in relationships, anything that we have not healed, the work we have not done, every shadow that we have ignored, will find expression through our partner. To wrap that idea up, a couple of years ago, I was already committed to my now wife. But in my mind, I was still fantasizing about other women I had dated. I was still thinking about some more women that I knew. And like, I was not committed in my energies. Like, okay, just, all right, I'm not sleeping with anybody else. I'm not dating anybody else. But in my mind, I'm fantasizing and I'm not really, really, really in the relationship. And my wife was traveling and she will have these waves of insecurity. And I will judge her like, why? Like, I'm with you. I'm not with anybody else. And that was truth. She like, and she was just so insecure. And I was judging her and thinking, I need a different partner. I cannot be with somebody who's giving me so much drama when I'm not cheating. And I was so fed up with that. I remember that I was in my condo. I thought, what do I do? I decided to take some mushrooms and like go deep into that. And the first thing that came up is there's one level in which we are all one.
Mm-hmm.
There's one level of consciousness where she knows everything you think about, the way you feel about her, the way you feel about every other woman. Not consciously, she's not that sensitive, but there's a part of her, a part of all of us that knows what we think about everybody else. There's no secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And he was telling me, you think just because you're not doing anything, just because she's not with you, just because there's nothing she has seen or heard that could give her reasons to mistrust you, that she just shouldn't be insecure. She's a woman, she's sensitive. She's not reacting to what she sees or what she hears, but what she feels and to who you are. And I said, the only way you can be certain that it's not you is if you clean up your act. If you get yourself fully committed, only then you will see, do you really have an insecure girlfriend, or were you the one that just didn't want to face his own shadows, his own compulsions? And I took that as a challenge. Like, all right, I'm going to cut all this nonsense out and do whatever it takes to be all in my relationship without having any conversation with my wife. And like most of that just evaporated. Like,
Interesting.
yeah. And I realized it was me all along.
Mm-hmm.
It is you 99.9999% of the time.
Yeah.
Always you. Yeah.
It's it's such a hard truth to face.
Yeah.
For many. Yeah, it's like this work is like transformational.
Yeah.
If it's just again a whole other podcast to dive into.
Yeah.
But and I resonate. This other quote here. You don't need another cold plunge, ayahuasca trip, or cathartic release. The rush you need is not found in the intense emotions of hypothermia or psychedelic ego death. It's found in having the difficult conversations you have been avoiding with those right in front of you. Relevant to the times we live in.
Yes, yeah. I recently shared that on Facebook. Has over 1,000 shares.
Oh yeah,
like,
it's great.
Going viral everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start by saying that ayahuasca, cold plunges, psychedelic ego deaths, those things, they're useful and needed for many people at certain points of
Good
their
tools,
journey.
yeah.
However, life is not hiding and growth is not hiding at the other side of a trip to the jungle, at the other side of a cathartic psychedelic experience, at the other side of a cold plunge and a sauna and some screaming into the forest. Great experiences, very useful for many people. But eventually we come back to the only thing that really matters, which is this moment and who you are being moment to moment. Because what is the use of sitting with a lot of medicines, taking a lot of psychedelics, doing a lot of cold plunges, screaming, working out, pushing yourself to the edges, if when you come to your home, you treat your wife, your husband in a way that creates more suffering? Or you go to work and somebody says something to you and you're afraid to speak up, to say, hey, that wasn't cool. Hey, I need to talk to you. What's the point of all that work if when it counts, we shy away? If we have a message, we have some work we want to share with the world, we have some dreams of the life we want to live, the business we want to grow, the relationships we want to have, and we see that woman walking down the street and we let her pass. We see that opportunity knocking at our door, but it's going to require work, so we don't step in. How long are we going to hide in the comfort of artificial discomfort before we realize that our life is the greatest medicine? And we're all given as much as we can handle, not more, not less. And the specific cocktail of experiences, people, emotions, wins and challenges, that tailored experience that can inspire us to be better human beings. So most of us, if we only committed to leaning in a little bit into what is uncomfortable, no need to lean all the way into drinking ayahuasca 100 times. For some people, that's their calling, and that's fine. You know, that for me, it was a big part of my journey. It still is to this day. But I'm realizing more and more that it is that moment when I'm angry at my wife, taking that breath and sitting down with her and saying, hey, love, this was painful for me, and let's talk about this. Or that moment when I call my dad and I tell him like that, I love you, and I'm scared of his reaction. Or that moment when somebody I'm working with is being out of integrity and I want to be nice and not bring it up because I don't want to rock the boat, and I say, hey man, this was not our agreement. I don't appreciate this. Those things are what really count, because that's when I'm living life fully, really, really fully. So no amount of anything we do in the background will replace that. So all of those things are okay as long as they're inviting us, pushing us into showing up more fully. But if we're not showing up, then that just amounts to entertainment. Mm-hmm. And then we have it all wrong, which many people do.
Mind blown. But like, I know, it's like one of those things where it's like, it's these are the hardest things for people to do.
Yeah.
The hardest. Mm-hmm. But it's so simple.
Yeah.
And such a freeing, liberating thing. If you do it, the integrity part. So great stuff, man. Do you have just my own question here? Like, this knowledge and these insights? Because the way you speak is it's very deep. It's another level. Has this just come through to you, or like, Have you always been this way? You know?
No, I was.
Very powerful stuff.
Thank you, appreciate it. People are surprised because I was the party guy, the guy who's just drunk, who probably people thought this guy has 2 neurons, maybe 3.
Oh, yes.
But what I found is that the only thing we really suffer is the habit of being ourselves. That's what limits us. Just no matter how great we are, you know, you're a great guy, but your greatness limits you because you could be so much greater. Eventually, every path, every spiritual journey, even business is meant to make you lean beyond what you're comfortable, to make you a bigger person. And ultimately, every serious spiritual journey is not one of self-development or self-growth, but it's more like self-annihilation or self-destruction. Small s self, meaning who I am, my mind, my thoughts, my compulsions, the things I like, the things I dislike, that's at the root of my pain. And that's what I suffer, and that limits me. So growth means practicing every day, putting that aside, putting all the noise, like not judging it, just all right, this is just you're limited, and in my own practice, trying to make myself available to life, because this is very limited, but life is so vast. So more and more, I have found that the more that I cultivate that like bowing down, understanding that I don't know anything, and that who Nicolas is very limited, and he plays a role, but there's many things he doesn't know, there's many flaws he has and whatnot, and the more that I can just honor that, accept him, love him, and not let him drive the wheel, the more that I make myself fertile soil for life to express itself through me, for words, for wisdom, for teachings to come true. That they say those who teach learn twice. So for me, everything that I speak about is a conversation that I have with myself as well.
Yes.
Because I don't have it all figured out. There's more areas where I can lean into integrity, into showing up more fully, into putting myself aside even more.
Yes.
So yeah, but the practice is the moment we put ourselves aside and we allow for the life that is already within us to come forth, then that is the most beautiful experience of life. But that's also when we tap into what people refer to as, our genius. It's not ours, it's from somewhere else. We just make ourselves available to it.
By giving the space. I love it so much. This has been great, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much. Like I said, we'll probably have to we'll do this again.
Sure.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah.
But for those, you're doing a lot with bridging the gap between both spiritual and entrepreneurship worlds, entrepreneurial worlds. So you're offering a lot of really cool resources and everything you've learned on both sides, because you've done it very successfully. Where can people find you?
So right now on Facebook, I'm Nicolas Canon Garay, Garay. On Instagram at Nico Canon, and then underscore. I think
in the middle.
No, the one under.
Oh, at the end.
At the end.
So Nico Canon
underscore. Yes, that's where people can find me. Right now, we're just in the launching process of the Spirit-led Business Academy, which is basically a business academy for spiritual people. And that's a big part of my work right now. And then with my private clients, I work with more of established entrepreneurs, like lawyers, 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs that maybe run all the way into that side and are trying to find a better relationship to themselves, their family, and their spiritual journey. So spirituality for business people, business for spiritual people.
Yes.
That's it.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Well, we'll post all your links in the bottom.
Sounds good.
And to everyone out there, I hope you guys enjoyed. I really did. You guys know I'm very into this side of things myself. So I really enjoyed it. But if you guys think that someone else can find value, please share with them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we will see you guys on the next one. Peace.